Welcome to Living a Luxury Lifestyle, where we talk with influencers in luxury lifestyle products and services from around the globe. I'm your host, Cliff Perotti. Welcome to Living a Luxury Life. I'm your host, Cliff Perotti. In today's episode, we'll be speaking with Robert Habeeb. He's the CEO and founder of Maverick Hotels and Restaurants, a hospitality management and development company out of Chicago and Boston. Rob brings over 35 years experience in the hospitality industry, and his insights are sought by both small and large hotel developers around the globe. We're excited to have him with us on the show today and hear about his journey and that of his company. Well, welcome to the show, Robert Habeeb.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Bob, you currently reside in Chicagoland, but where are you originally from?
I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is a town most known for being Joe Biden's hometown and The Office, the sitcom The Office. But it was a great place to grow up.
And did you have any siblings, any brothers, sisters?
I'm the oldest of five. So,
Holy Toledo.
And you sharing.
So did you leave home as soon as you possibly could?
I did. You know, I'm the prodigal son. My brothers and sisters all live within a mile of my homestead, and we grew up. And I left home when I was 21, moved to New York and Washington, D.C., and then on to Chicago. So I left Scranton a long time ago, but my family still lives there.
I actually know a couple of people in Scranton, which is kind of strange to me because as you find out, the more you get out here in the world and the more you do, the smaller the world becomes, doesn't it?
But that 6 degrees of separation, I'm always surprised, and I think there's a hometown pride to it too. When you bump into someone, I bumped into a couple of people in Chicago that hailed from Scranton, and you have an instant kinship with them. All of a sudden, you're inner circle with one another because you share that heritage. And it's really cool.
I'll tell you a quick funny story. I was sitting in a cigar bar here in Chicago, in the Gold Coast area. I don't know if you know it, but so I'm sitting down there and I'm just having a cigar. I'm entertaining a friend from out of area, and there's a guy sitting across the table from us, so to speak. He's in a lounge chair and we're in a lounge chair, and we start a conversation. Well, it turns out he's not only from Northern California, which is where I was from at the time, but he owns a winery that I literally had been in 2 days before I'd come to Chicago. And I'm going, oh my God, Mary in your served me. And he goes, oh, Mary's great. It just is funny like that. So anyway, so where'd you go to school?
You know, I originally started in a local college in Scranton, and then post-grad to Duke. And shifted quickly from what I thought was going to be my life's work. You know, as when you're growing up, you have this preconceived notion of where your life is going to end up. And mine was that I was born to be a lawyer because I'm a natural litigator. And I learned that wasn't going to be the case.
That is so funny. I saw that in your background a little bit, and I watched a lot of videos about you, man. And it was interesting because you're going to law school, and I'm sure your parents are going, oh, that's great. And the next thing you know, you're calling them and saying, you know what, I'm going into the hospitality industry. What? Were they happy with that change?
Yeah, I'm not sure I gave them the option. You know, what happened, and remember that was a different era. I was going to school, which was very boring. And then at night I was working to pay my bills in the hospitality industry.
Sure.
And that was exciting and challenging. And as a young man, it was the place to be, and it was so cool. And again, being from a small town, it was, it was a very different experience. And I found myself drawn to it. And ultimately, I realized at some point that I could make a career of it. In the beginning, it was a great way to make money and party. But eventually it became a profession.
Well, and so tell us a little bit about that journey. Here you are sitting as the CEO and founder of It's Maverick Hotels and Restaurants, and you were with one company for a very, very long time, actually. So how did you get out of school and then bang, how do you end up in the hospitality industry? I know you start in restaurants, and that's good because that tells me you know every aspect of this business, right? The only way to learn it is to do it.
Absolutely true, especially in hospitality, where so much of what you do every day you can't glean from a book. You have to experience it. And I started out on the honestly the bar side of the business, then got into restaurants. From restaurants, got into hotel food and beverage, and like everything in life, strictly through happenstance, um, I was the food and beverage manager of a big hotel, and the general manager acted up and got fired. And the CEO of the company came and said, "You're in charge till I can find somebody." And I transitioned then into the hotel side of the business. And my career path after that became regional vice president of that company, um, onto a multinational company and ran their US subsidiary for 21 and a half years. Ran a company called First Hospitality Group here in Chicago. And then in 2018, 1 of 18, I reached that point where I really wanted to start my own shop and pursue the business a little differently. You know, we'd grown FHG to 55 hotels, as I recall. It had become a very corporate job.
Hmm.
I wanted to just change the music a little bit and dance to a different tune. So I formed Maverick. Maverick, we own two businesses. There's Maverick Hotels, which is in the hotel management business.
Okay.
Maverick Restaurants, which is in the restaurant management business.
Okay.
And I've always been a believer that those are two disciplines that are related, but not the same. Hoteliers think very systematically, and the hotel business is kind of a left brain business, if you will, whereas restaurateurs, I don't know if you have friends that are restaurateurs, they're all a bit nuts.
Okay, wait. So wait, I used to own a restaurant, right?
What's that Latin? Ibid quan or whatever. So it is proven, right?
That's yeah. Well, let me just tell you, you hit the nail on the head. We're all a little bit nuts.
You need to be. It's a very demanding space. It requires
Yes.
creativity and science all at the same time. And so I when I branched out and set these two businesses up, the intent was we have totally different management structures, even different partners. My restaurant partners, a very renowned restaurateur out of Atlanta, and my hotel partners are hoteliers. So
So now you also okay, so you end up going through that. You decide to kind of get. One of the things that I'm hearing is in starting Maverick, it sounds like you were a little bit tired of the corporate thing and you wanted more of the creative side of life. Is that safe to say?
The projects that we've been tackling at Maverick have been more fit. I'm not going to say fun, because fun connotes that the intent is not to make money, and we're all about making money.
Yeah.
But the projects have been more ambitious, and um, we're being very selective about who we do business with and what projects we take on, and maybe for me slow the pace down a bit, so I can sink my teeth into each individual project. You know, once you reach a critical mass, like I in my previous position, you really wander from meeting to meetings. You don't get to immerse yourself in the hotel industry, and that distressed me. I love this business. I have always loved this business, and I feel now like I'm able to immerse myself in the creative. It might be the wrong word, because there's a lot of business. You know, a lot of lessons you learn over the years you can put to practice now,
Right.
to develop meaningful, cool, fun hotels that make money.
Well, and in the real estate industry, which is the industry that I pretty much have been in for the last 35 years, we would say you hear it from company owners. I've done a lot of consulting with large brokerage owners, and they'll say the same thing. They'll say, I got in this business because I loved real estate and I loved helping people find homes or properties or whatever, investments. And the bigger I grew, I did what I was supposed to do. I grew big and I got it all good. I got further and further and further away from the customer and the joy that I loved in the business. Yeah. And so we try to find ways in working with those executives where we're trying to help them find a way that they don't implode their business, right? But they find a way to get back in touch with the fun element of what they're doing, because I do think that's important.
And make no mistake, I loved every day that I was in that role. And then sometimes you step back in your own personal life. It was more, for me, an occasion of stepping back and saying, okay, you know, I'm at that. You identify in your life when you're on that final run, when you've got now to make these decisions that will take you to the end of your career. What do you want them to be?
Right.
In my case, we've done so many wonderful things that I'm proud of with that company, but I felt like we were at an inflection point in the hotel business where the industry was fundamentally changing. And I had a lot of theories on what that looked like, and I wanted to have the chance to explore those theories and vet them, if you will, because I think the world is a very different place in the last decade,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and definitely our industry.
Well, in fact, let's just stick with that thought for a moment. How have you seen the industry change, and how do you think it's going to move in the next few years? I mean, what are you thinking? Where are we going with this?
If you look at it in from the two different perspectives, from the guest perspective, the hotel industry has morphed significantly. We're very segmented, right? There's a boutique hotel for every interest that you could imagine. Guests want an experience, not just a bed. Food and beverage is now the leading advantage in many hotels. So where food and beverage was a curse at one time, we're now working really hard at making sure that hotel food and beverage is a solid experience. We have the introduction of technology to everything we do, from the way people reserve to the way they experience our hotels, and so on and so forth. And of course, the other perspective is the people that work in hotels. We have this generational shift in society, and the wants and needs of our employees today, and more so in the future, has shifted seismically. It's all about decentralization. It's all about being nimble. It's all about, this pandemic has taught us that. Right? Nimble has gained this incredible positioning in our business, because whatever you did 2 years ago, you're not doing it today.
Right. You're also touching on something that I think I caught in one of your interviews that talked about the people in your company, and you talked about keeping them inspired, and tell me about that. How do you inspire your people to keep the flame and the passion going for them?
I think that all human beings have a core driver, which is, what does it mean to me? And sometimes we forget that when you make some business decision, or you do something else, you look at it almost holistically. When the truth of the matter is, every human being that receives that decision is going to interpret it personally. And so I believe that that personal connection with people, that shirt sleeves. I think the people that I've worked with over the years would say, first and foremost, by the way, the guy is funny. I mean, I could be a comedian. What does that have to do with running a business? A lot. It has a lot to do with it. Yeah. Because to humanize the leader, rather than the leader believing that there's some kind of nobility that was, passed down from the Roman emperors, for the leader just to be somebody who's okay with telling a joke, or making you feel comfortable when you talk, and has the ability to make you want to come to work every day rather than have to. The game's half won. Yeah.
It's interesting, because I think that especially in the hospitality and restaurant industry, I think about restaurants, and I think about, I can go to a restaurant and have really great food, but if the service is really bad, I might give it another chance. Maybe not. If right. And if it's the other way around, right? If the food is really bad, but the service is great, I will come back and give it, maybe the cook out an off night or something, Right. But they do keep you coming back, the people.
No, absolutely. Danny Myers wrote a great book, and he talks about, at one time he had 3 or 4 of the top 10 restaurants in New York. And he said, the interesting thing about my restaurants is, if you look at them, none of them rate number 1 for food, none of them rate number 1 for ambiance, none of them rate number 1 for service, but the amalgam of that, the collective, is you're going to have good service, get a good meal, and you're going to like the restaurant. And you have to hit on all those cylinders for your business to be in that upper tier.
Now, you're also a person, it seems, that enjoys educating others and sharing your knowledge. I see that you've been an adjunct professor at Roosevelt University for over 20 years. How'd you get involved in education like that? And what sort of subjects are you teaching?
Again, quite by accident. I've always been involved in the community, the hotel community. I'm a community. I've been on the boards of the state and national hotel association and been active on the boards of colleges and so on. So it's always been something I've felt that we have a responsibility to our employees and to the community at large. And over lunch one day, the head of the hotel school at Roosevelt University here in Chicago was lamenting that his wife is mad at him because he has a Thursday night grad school class that he's got to teach because the professor moved out of town. And I know he was baiting me in, I could feel it.
You could feel it.
I could feel the tug, and I thought, oh, look, I'll that might be fun. I tried it, and I found that it was a remarkable transformational experience for me, because not only did I really enjoy being in that community, the academic community, for one night a week, right, leaving the hardcore business world and going back to academia, but as Covey says, it helped me sharpen the saw. When you go back and read the directions, right, everything, if you go back to any item that you cook every day and reread the recipe once and realize that you're putting in too much pepper, or you're not putting some other ingredient in, it recharges you. And I found that experience that first semester. And I teach in the grad school. I teach diversity. I teach organizational development, and occasionally managing for excellence. I haven't taught that in the last couple of years because I've had to cut back. But rereading the directions and having to speak to someone about it and expose your own hypocrisy, right? We all have that twinge of hypocrisy that lies beneath the surface.
What are you talking about? I don't know. What you're talking about.
Right. Well, for me, I'll speak for myself.
Oh, there it is.
When I had to expose that and explain it to the class, I went back the next day and said, okay, this is what we talked about last night. I want to be recommitted to these same principles.
My mother was famous for telling me, look, if you want to learn something really well, teach it. Because the level you have to know to teach it is different than the level you have to know to just do it. I thought, well, that's really it's what you're saying. I mean, totally. You did an interview that you said something that really, I really caught on to. And it said, if I may quote you, 90% of what you learn in life, you learn by the time you leave home. What do you mean by that?
I don't know how many people that are watching or listening today will empathize with this, but I think most of your character as a human is developed in the years that you're under your parents' supervision. And in my case, my dad was such an inspiration, very different guy than I, very modest man, was a salesman all of his life, but he instilled in me values that when I went out into the world, I took with me. And it represents to this very day, 90% of who I am.
Yeah.
The honesty, humility, and things like that. The rest of what I've learned since then almost seems to be icing on that cake. And I credit my father, and I think many people would. In my grad school class, I asked this question. Tell me who the most successful person you could think of is. And people start immediately to talk about Michael Jordan, Oprah, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I follow up and I say, what person has had the biggest impact on your life? And to the person, everybody in the class points to a relative, mother, father, grandparent, aunt, uncle. And then I ask the question, well, then how are you measuring success? Because what you just said is the person who most swayed your life isn't Michael Jordan or Oprah or any of these other people we talked about. So maybe the most successful person I ever met was my dad.
Yeah. That's a good point. What did your dad do? What did your dad do?
He's deceased now, but he was a car salesman for all the time he grew up. And that's a rough game.
Oh man, that's so you come from a sales background, man.
In that business, we lived through recessions and so on, but nobody bought cars. And it wasn't until years later that I realized what was going on. But when he and my mom had to maintain the home with 5 kids, and he was a commission salesman, there was months that he brought the envelope home and it shook quiet. And mom stretched. We had some strange dietary things going on back then that I used to think were experimental, and I learned later it's 100 ways to cook bologna and ground beef and
Yeah, no, that's really that's good. That's a good story. Um, how do you think, well, where do you see the areas of opportunity in hospitality today?
I think the industry and the net results of this pandemic will be that it's going to accelerate the pace of change in the hospitality industry. And I mean that just because there's a level set going on. The pandemic will one day be in the history books, and we will amend the way that we deal with sanitation and other things going forward, the same way we amended the way that we looked at security after 9/11. But I think that there was this train that was headed down the track, and the pandemic created a hill because there's going to be a reshaping of the industry by the nature of what's happened. Some people that have been in this business for a very long time sadly won't be any longer, and there'll be new people coming in. Same in the restaurant space. Very, very heartbreaking to think that a lot of people have put their life's blood, sweat, tears, and talent in operating a restaurant and were saving up for retirement are now wiped out. Very sad. And that there'll be new people take their place.
It's interesting because I've seen so many people just in Chicagoland, where we all both sit, the number of restaurants that have gone down is just stymieing. And I'm not talking about just the little mom and pops. In fact, a lot of those are surviving, they're making it. But I'm talking about institutions that have been in Chicago for 100 years are just suddenly up for sale. They're closed, they're out, they're gone. And I do think that it's an opportunity. Now, if you watch the world WGN news, you see the new entrepreneurs starting up their little restaurants, starting up their whatever, it's their food truck or whatever. There's creativity coming at a very small level. I think the challenge is like and I'm sure you see this with large organizations, they've got to, when the nut's bigger every month, you really have to make sure you have a formula for success. So credit to everybody and to you for doing the things you've done and keeping it rolling, because it's been tough. I got to believe you have some customers that aren't here today that were yesterday.
Yeah, very much so. And I think there's optimism in the last month. We talk about a trying month. We've opened 2 hotels and a restaurant in the last month, and all are doing well, I'm happy to say. And
I'm knocking on wood for you, man.
Well, I'll knock as well, because that's a pleasant surprise, and it does signal that we're starting to come out of this dive that we've been in.
Yeah, it's so do you see the industry going in terms of the hospitality? Do you see it going with more luxury, more boutique-y, more neighborhood versus downtown? I mean, what are you thinking is going to happen in Chicagoland area?
That's a good question. I think the definition of all those words that you just described is now nebulous, because we find ourselves in this space where luxury means different things to different people. Luxury used to be very well defined. It was the thread count of the sheets, the amenities, the 24-hour room service. I mean, you could quantify luxury so easily. And now luxury means very different things to people. There are hotels that are focused on wellness, and of course, the genre, if you will, is very big. It used to be that a luxury hotel was assumed to be snooty and hello, and luxury hotels today can be hip and swanky and happening, and it's it's a very different landscape.
Do you think that the hotel customer has become more casual? Even the affluent customer, have they become more casual over this COVID experience or through it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Again, I think that was just the next step in society's progression.
Yeah.
Being in the hotel business for years and years and years and years, it was all about the scarf that matched your tie, and the kind of the formality. And then the scarf was gone; it was just the tie. And I was on Fox Business the other day, so I had to wear a tie. And I thought to myself, my God, I was trying to remember how to tie it.
When was the last time you had to do that?
Yeah. And that reality went up that it wasn't that long ago that every day was a dark suit and tie, and now you're reaching the back of the closet for that thing.
Yeah, that's funny. You're involved with restaurants. Are you a foodie?
Yeah, that seems obvious, right?
Yeah. What's
Oh,
your favorite kind of cuisine? I mean, or what you have a couple of favorite. I know you're going to tell me about your places, but do you have like a favorite restaurant in the world? I mean, I could used to be able to say my favorite restaurant in the world was this restaurant called Citronelle in Washington, D.C. And
I know
uh,
that space. Yeah. Yeah.
oh my God, I love that restaurant. I was only able to, I was there for National Association of Realtors meetings twice a year. So I would make a point of going and having my 5-star restaurant experience. And oh, it was wonderful. Do you have a favorite place in the world that you love to dine?
Uh, I don't. And I've been blessed to travel the world, and you could have discussions about. I say, you go to Greece and you can walk down any street and pick any taberna and you're going to have a good meal. And likewise in Italy, I've never had a bad meal in Italy.
That's
And
true.
in Chicago, we're blessed with this restaurant landscape. I don't know how you'd pick your favorite one.
It's
I
hard.
love Middle Eastern food by heritage, and you just can't find it anywhere. So that's a passion. And Middle Eastern food is more than kebabs and shawarma. I mean, there's a deep, well defined segment. I love Italian food, obviously. I love great city for steakhouses.
It is. Yeah, no, it is. It's true. It's fun to find kind of discover. I mean, that's the thing about Chicago. I used to say you could dine out at a different restaurant every night and you would not cross back to the first restaurant for a year or so easily.
That is true. Sadly, maybe a little bit less so at the present time. And
Yeah, yeah, and
it
it's
will come back. I mean, we love to. This will be a restaurant city. I did a panel a couple of weeks ago with restaurateurs, and we were asked if there was an expectation, as some of the media has said, that the net effect of this pandemic will be the neighborhood restaurant, the entrepreneur restaurant is going to be replaced by Olive Gardens on every corner in
oh
Chicago.
no.
Chicago's a place you don't find those kind of restaurants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And everybody felt strongly that that wasn't going to happen. That the restaurant community would come back, and there might be new players, but they'll be back.
Well, and I think that in a city like Chicago, which has the neighborhoods are so culturally different, culturally defined. No, there's no way. Although I have to say, I was really depressed to hear that Macy's was leaving Water Tower and it was being replaced by Target. What the heck is going on
You're
here?
not alone there. You're not alone.
um, you've talked about when you talk about kind of this self-actualization journey that you're now on as a professional and personally. You once said it's about quality, not quantity at this point. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I think I call it the vernal equinox of your career, right? For some portion of your career, it's got to be bigger. Your paycheck bigger, your portfolio bigger, your so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then you one day step back and say, what's big enough? Am I really, as a human being, happy with what I accomplish in the course of the day? So with Maverick, I'm trying very much to focus mostly on quality of partners, quality of teammates, quality of projects. And quality doesn't mean that everything has to be 4, 5, 6-star. Quality means these are good people to do business with. These are good people to work with. This is going to be a good hotel for this community. Rather than just, as you know, in real estate, it's little pink houses. If the numbers work, do it.
Yeah.
And you do reach a point, I think, in the progression of your life, if not your career, where you step back and say, I want to maybe teach just a little bit more, do projects I can sink my teeth in. I'm straying. I can't say yet, but I'm involved in a project that's only pseudo hospitality. It's probably as much in the tourism sector as anything else. We just completed our project on Navy Pier, which was, that was a whale. I mean, it was, we hooked a whale there and brought it in, and it wasn't easy.
Why don't you, let's flow to that. So tell us about that project.
We just on the 18th of March opened a 223 room Curio by Hilton hotel on Navy Pier called the Sable. We opened Lyrica, which is a Latin inspired restaurant on Navy Pier. And we will reopen the middle of this month are offshore, which is the world's largest rooftop bar, all on Navy Pier.
Wow.
And that's been a fun development. I mean, think about it, for anybody in the real estate business, developing real estate on Navy Pier is cool. But we built what is the essentially Lake Point Tower on its side, this big long building
Right.
on a pier that was built in 1916 following Daniel Burnham's plan for Chicago, for which the as-builts floated away years ago in 7/10 of a mile out in the lake. So we had to deal with spawning seasons and everything else. And then, if that wasn't all fun enough, we had civil unrest and pandemics in the middle of construction.
Yeah.
So it turned out to be an adventure like this, and that adds to the satisfaction. The hotel opened up. In the hotel industry, we say that RevPAR index, that's essentially market share, is the big dog. And a new hotel typically starts at a relatively low RevPAR index. It wants to grow to 100%. And if you can beat 100%, you pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Our hotel in Navy Pier opened up the first full week of operation with a 132.9% RevPAR index. We got smoked right out of the gates, and I'm happy to say.
Yeah.
So all that work would have really been stressful if it opened and nobody cared, but we opened and we were busy.
In a project like that, how long did it take you from start to finish?
7 years.
Yeah, because people don't realize, and that's just one of the things that a pier offers, and I've dealt with some oceanfront properties where you want to do some kind of development. Man, you have so many governmental agencies that you have got to deal with. It's like a morass.
Yeah, Army Corps of Engineers, Illinois,
yes,
Natural Resources, City. I mean, it is in theory, and even within those, there's this question mark about, because it's not a common thing, right? Is it in the 42nd Ward? The answer was yes. That the 42nd Ward alderman is the alderman for the pier, even though we're out in the lake. It was a real adventure in figuring this thing out from beginning to end, and nothing was clear. You can imagine just the legal. I remember we spent a month trying to figure out what would happen if an event occurred on the pier that disabled the pier and made the hotel unable to be accessed, because our insurances would only be triggered by a casualty if something happened to the hotel. Then you'd be able to collect and you'd be able to get business interruption. But when you're on a pier, if something happened further down the pier and people couldn't get to your hotel, then what happens? And we literally spent a month figuring through some mechanism on how we can satisfy the necessity to have that risk insured. And we finally did figure it out. But
yeah, the business interruption aspect of it that had nothing to do with your business, but 4 doors down. Yeah. And it's so funny because people today, the consumer that goes to Navy Pier has no idea what it used to look like. And if you've ever seen the Blues Brothers, which is going to date me enormously, and they have that car chase through what was then Navy Pier, it's just a hall with some wood up, and it was bad.
One of the things, I'll sneak a commercial in here and say that one of the things that I've been most surprised at, we opened offshore and we expected the mix to be 70% tourists, 30% locals. The mix turned out to be 70% locals, 30% tourists, and that number growing after the summer. And we're finding the same in the hotels. Right now, the hotel's running 80 to 90% local. So if you haven't been to Navy Pier lately, you should see what has happened on the pier. The people that operate the pier decided, in honor of the pier's 100th anniversary, they call it the Centennial Vision. They were going to reimagine the pier, remodel it. What were little tiny restaurants. There's Let Us Entertain You, is 3 or 4 restaurants on the pier now. The finishes are very high end. It's aesthetically beautiful. There's Shakespeare Theater. There are the boats. There's our hotel. There's our rooftop. It's not what the Blues Brothers encountered.
Yeah. The big empty hallway they could drive through. So let's talk about, for people that don't understand the difference between a hotel management company versus a company that owns the hotel, what does a management company do?
The biggest surprise when you describe the business model to people is people immediately assume that Hilton and Marriott, for example, own those hotels.
Right.
And my recollection is Marriott owns one, and Hilton owns maybe five or six, if that, if they haven't sold them. The industry has divested itself into specific groups. There is the franchisor, Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, and so on. Hyatt actually owns more of their real estate than the others. But and then there is the ownership group, real estate investment trusts, pension funds, so on and so forth. And then lastly, there's the operator. And the operator is the management company. That's what we do. We're also part of the ownership group in some of these hotels, but they're not mutually exclusive, nor are they necessarily one and the same. And the franchisors really are not into hotel ownership. So the franchisor is the person that develops the brand and creates these wonderful loyalty programs like Hilton Honors and so on that have tens of millions of members and visit their hotels. The owner commits the capital, and we have a wonderful partner at Navy Pier, Akron AG, Swiss Wealth Fund. We work with them on the financing and all of the other related financial things, the ownership things. And then lastly, there's Maverick, and Maverick Hotels runs the hotel, and Maverick Restaurants runs the restaurant, and we are paid a fee for our expertise.
How involved in a project as it's starting from ground up? How involved in the design of a project are you guys?
I'd like to be on day one, even if it's not compensated, because so many things. The biggest mistake that people make, and I see it again and again and again and again, is people develop their first hotel, and they right away tell you, "Don't worry about it. I've done this. I've built homes." And the hotel. Every piece of a hotel is different. Even the analogy I always hear is hotels and hospitals are the same thing. It's just that the rates are different. And that's really not true, because what keys, how the keying system works, and the doors, and where the light fixtures need to be placed, and then as a result where the electrical outlets need to be placed, what works, what lasts in the long run, hotel doesn't. So we have 3 hotel projects right now in the pre-construction phase, and I like to be at every one of those meetings to give input and say, the best way to do that is X, or the best technology for that is Y.
Yeah. Well, and I think that people sometimes are penny wise and pound foolish with that. I've seen it in developing homes where I walk into a kitchen that's a brand new kitchen, and I'm going, I don't know who designed this kitchen, but it was not somebody that cooks.
Yeah. No, precisely. Form follows function, and very often people lose sight of that. And it's the same in restaurants, by the way. When you develop a restaurant, you want to have generally be 1/3 back of the house, 2/3 front of the house. You need that to make the financial model work long run. There's just so many important touch points in developing and building a restaurant that are going to impact the business in a big, big, big way later. Lighting. Do you have controls where the lighting? How many times have you ever walked into a restaurant and the lighting is like jacked? It's bright and not, and it just ruins the ambiance. And the music is tinny, and all those other things you just have to focus on.
Yeah. I got to ask, Maverick, when you describe why that name? Now you've described it as that's your personality, but what do you mean by that? Why Maverick? And I think you call your employees Mavericks, right?
We do.
So tell me what that's about.
The origin of the name, I'll give my restaurant partner, a guy by the name of Bob Amick out of Atlanta, who's really a creative genius, James Beard Award-winning guy. Mm-hmm. And when I was trying to name the company, he called me up and he said, "I've got the name for your new company." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Maverick." And it was like a cha-ching at that moment. And because that's all, I've always been known as a maverick. I'm just one of those personalities that never does what anyone else does. And then, so I researched the name. Here's the history of the name Maverick. Samuel Maverick was a rancher in Texas somewhere just before the Civil War, if I'm not mistaken. And he didn't brand his herd because he thought it was inhumane. So Samuel Maverick, the word Maverick denotes from the fact that all the ranchers in Texas knew that if you saw cattle and they were unbranded, it was from the Maverick Ranch because he did his own thing. The epilogue of the story is over time, every time somebody found an unbranded cattle, they would take it over to Sam Maverick's ranch. So Sam Maverick started out with 200 head of steer, ended up with 2,000 head of steer because everybody in town brought them. Whenever they found an unbranded cattle, they go, "Oh, this must be from Sam Maverick's place."
Oh my God, that's hysterical.
And I just thought, wow, there's a fit. Because a Maverick isn't just someone who thinks differently and finds different solutions to problems, but it's someone who, by that nature, can capitalize beyond the way others do.
I love it. I love it. How do you find your projects? How do they come to you?
That's actually a good question because it's not always the same way. Thinking about the project I'm working on now, one is the case where someone I've done a development with in the past came back and said, "Hey, I'd like to do this project." Some is a referral. Sometimes people say, and the nice thing about being around for a very long time is that you build up a reputation. So if someone goes to a consultant or a banker or, so the people that do the feasibility studies and they're asked, can you recommend a couple of people that I should talk to about this? You end up fairly high on the list, and that's a good thing.
On your website, there's a quote. If you don't do something out of the ordinary, it stays ordinary.
Yeah.
And with that, I want to thank you for being extraordinary and joining us on Living a Luxury Life. I really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it as well. It's been a pleasure to be here.
And I'll see you at offshore. We'll have a nice cocktail there.
Like that.
All right. Thanks again, Bob.
Thank you for listening in on this episode of Living a Luxury Life. This program is brought to you by the Luxury Marketing Council, a global network of leaders and influencers in the international luxury industry. Join us next time as we discuss trending topics with luxury lifestyle influencers. I'm your host, Cliff Perotti. Thank you for tuning in.